Thank you so much for being here today. It is Valentine's Day. Upon the day, I have for you today a list of 20. I have for you today. I have for you a list of 25 of my most anticipated books. So what I created was a list of the 25 most anticipated books in Canada by Canadian authors. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Welcome to another video. So I'm filming this video today on Valentine's Day, and I was trying to think of something that would be fun to do. I do kind of have a limited repertoire, I guess. I don't read a lot of romance. I mostly read literary fiction, as most of you know. I noticed that a lot of people are making anticipated reads for 2025 videos, which is amazing, and it's making me freak out about my TBR and all the exciting things that are coming down the pipeline. But here I am presenting you with something just a little bit different, a combination of anticipation and my love letter, so to speak, to Canadian books and Canadian publishers. So I am going to get into this really exciting list of Canadian books that are coming out this spring that I think everybody might be able to find something interesting in and may be able to add to their TBR a title or even two. But I just want to take a moment to say that given the situation that we find ourselves in at this time, I was a little bit hesitant to make a video this week. I've been having conflicting feelings about this platform for a variety of reasons, and I don't know if other booktubers feel the same way. If you're a booktuber and you're watching this video and you've gotten this far, let me know in the comments section below if you feel comfortable, or you could always privately email me. My email is always in the description box below. Your thoughts. I think I will probably continue to make videos, but for me it's turning out to be a bit more of a trade-off than I realized because of the situation with you know, Google owning YouTube and the oligarchic situation. I don't want to say more than that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that if you happen to be a subscriber of mine, a regular subscriber of mine, and you're watching my channel from the United States, I would appreciate if you could just go and check and make sure that you're still subscribed. I know that I might be sounding a little bit paranoid, but I was watching the analytics for the video that I made last week, which was a reading list for Black History Month. And I noticed that it's one of the least watched videos that I've had in a really long time. And I was curious if there's a possibility that there's some kind of suppression happening. I don't mind particularly for myself, but it makes me kind of queasy when I think about the implications longer term potentially for this kind of censorship. So I don't want to go off on a big preamble of this. I just think that if you are in the US, maybe check your subscribers, make sure that you're still subscribed to the booktubers that you would like to be subscribed to. And if you aren't already a subscriber and you're watching this video and really anywhere, I think it would really help booktubers in general if you could subscribe and like. I'm not sure if that's going to make a huge difference, but now more than ever, I think subscriptions to these channels are really, really important. So that's my appeal to you, and I would just want to get into the books now. I don't want to keep talking about this because it freaks me out. So let's talk about all the wonderful books that are coming this spring by Canadian authors. First book on my list is The Paris Express by Emma Donoghue. So Emma Donoghue is a historical fiction writer, and she is very loved. Her 2010 novel Room was a finalist for the Booker Prize. She's an Irish-Canadian novelist. And her other book, The Pull of the Stars, was on the long list for Canada Reads for this year. It's not in contention for the debates, but she does have this new book out, so that's pretty exciting. If you're already a fan, you'll be very happy. If you're not already a fan, I'll give you a sense of what this one is about. It's based on a disaster that happened in 1895, also referred to as the Montparnasse derailment. A Granville Paris Express train overran a buffer stop at its Gare Montparnasse terminus. It's the historic event that's the basis for this novel. So the novel is set on this express train that's headed for disaster. So the novel is really a historical thriller that reimagines this disaster. And it takes place over the course of a single day as this train travels from the Normandy coast to Paris. And it's carrying, of course, men, women, and children of all kinds of different backgrounds. And through the telling of the different characters' stories, Donoghue explores the politics and the fears and the chaos and the atmosphere of the end of the 19th century. A couple of character descriptions. We have an anarchist intent on destruction, so that sounds enticing. A young boy who's traveling by himself. A pregnant woman who's fleeing her home village to the big city where she can be anonymous. A medical student who suspects a girl may have a fatal disease. That's also mysterious. And then I think the railwaymen themselves are also featured in the story and their devotion to their jobs and to the train and the company and to each other. So it sounds really good. And I mean, I haven't ever read anything by Emma Donoghue, so maybe this would be a nice place to begin. Next, we have The Tiger and the Cosmonaut by Eddy Boudel Thien. So this is the story of Casper Han, who grew up in a small town in British Columbia, and now as an adult has moved to Vancouver and is living there with his boyfriend. He's the son of immigrants, and he's described as a dutiful son of immigrants. He doesn't often go home because of the tragedy that happened there when his twin brother Sam went missing when they were young. 20 years later, Casper's father has also vanished, bringing him and the family back to their hometown. Eventually, their father is found, but he's disoriented and confused, and it creates a scenario where the family has to confront their past. This is described as combining the atmosphere and intrigue of a cracking good suspense novel with the depth of a rich character study. It tells the story of a family whose members have long made themselves small and quiet and obedient, and what happens when that cycle is finally broken. And next up, we have We Could Be Rats by Emily Austen. This is a story about sisterhood. It's about two very different women. It's a coming-of-age story. The description says that Sigrid hates working at the Dollar Pal, but having always resisted the idea of growing up into the trappings of adulthood, she did not graduate high school, preferring to roam the streets of her small town with her best friend Greta, the only person in the world who ever understood her. Her older sister Marguerite is baffled and frustrated by Sigrid's inability to conform to expectations and polite society. But Sigrid's detachment veils a deeper turmoil and sensitivity. She's haunted by the pains from her past, from pretending her parents were swamp monsters when they shook the floorboards with their violent arguments, to grappling with losing Greta's friendship, to the opioid epidemic ravaging their town. As Marguerite sets out to understand Sigrid and the secrets she has hidden, both sisters, in their own time and way, discover that reigniting their shared childhood imagination is the only way forward. And Emily Austen is the author of Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, which I haven't read yet, but I have heard fantastic things about. Next up, we have The Book of Records by Madeleine Thien? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce Madeleine's last name. Madeleine Thien has won the Governor General's Award and had a Booker Prize shortlisted bestseller, Not Say We Have Nothing, and I should probably know how to pronounce her name, but I don't. This one, the Book of Records, is set in the sea, which is a sprawling and mysterious building complex that endlessly receives migrants from everywhere and seems to exist somewhere outside of normal space and time. Adolescent Lena lives there and cares for her ailing father. Having landed at the sea with only what could be carried by hand, Lena grows up with nothing but a trio of books to read. 3 volumes in a series about the lives of famous voyagers of the past. Soon, however, she discovers 3 eccentric neighbors in the building who have stories of their own to share. Eventually, she learns how she and her father came to reside in the sea, and it's from there that she discovers the cost of betrayal in her own life. This sounds really good. It says the Book of Records holds a mirror to the idea of fate in history, interrogates questions of legacy, explores how the political factors of a collective moment may determine an individual's future, and beautifully shows the infinite joys of art and intellectual endeavor. Next up, we have a thrilling tale of love and war set in medieval France, written on the dark by Gavriel K. or Gavriel K. Again, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. This is about Thierry Villard, who is a notorious tavern poet. He's intimately familiar with the rogues and shadows of that world, but not at all with courts and power. He is an unlikely person, despite his quickness, to be swept into the deadly contests of ambitious royals, assassins, and invading enemies. But he is indeed drawn into all these things on a savagely cold night in his beloved city of Oran, and so Thierry must use all the intelligence and charm he can muster as power struggles merge with a decades-long war to bring his country to the brink of destruction. It says, both sweeping and intimate, written on the dark, is an elegant tour de force about power and ambition playing out amid the equally intense human need for art and beauty and the memories to be left behind. Next up, we have Wildlife by Amanda Leduc. This time we're in 19th century Scotland, with a young Josiah who is banished by his father for seeing the divine in the animals around him, and he is then sent to Serbia with a small Christian mission to purge such nonsense from his soul. Miserably scribbling on the chapel floor one night, Josiah is visited by what he thinks is God in animal form. When his saviors, a hyena and her mate, rescue him from a natural disaster that kills the other missionaries and then bring him safely home, he founds a religion based on his belief that God granted speech to the hyenas as part of a divine plan to heal and exalt the human race. This one sounds like almost a mythical fairy tale. You guys, I think I'm gonna have to move my camera because the sun is gonna end up crossing me. So pardon me while I change the angle. It's quite warm in here, actually. There we go, that's better. We'll see how far I rotate as I film. Also coming out this spring, we have Bones of a Giant by Brian Thomas Isaac. This one is set in 1968. The synopsis reads, for the first time since his brother Eddy disappeared 2 years earlier, either a runaway or dead by his own hand, 16-year-old Louis Toma has shaken off some of his grief. His mother, Grace, and her friend Isabel have gone south to the United States to pick fruit and earn cash. Grace needs to put a bathroom and running water into the 3-room shack they share on the reserve, leaving Louis to spend the summer with his cousins, his Uncle Ned, and his Aunt Jean in the new house they've built on the farm along the Salmon River. Their warm family life is almost enough to counter the pressure he feels as a boy trying to become a man in a place where responsible adult men, like his uncle, are largely absent, broken by the residential school system and racism. This is clearly a coming-of-age story. The synopsis leaves us with the question, with so many traps laid around him, how will Louis find a path to a different future? Horsefly by Mirielle Gagné. This is translated from the French by Pablo Strauss. This is a chilling tale about what happens when we mess with nature. Set in 1942, we have as our protagonist a young etymologist, Thomas, who is sent on a secret mission to a remote island to work on biological weapons for the Allied military. The scientists live like prisoners while they look for the perfect carrier for anthrax among the island's many insects, trying at the same time to keep a local population in the dark until one of the islanders becomes ill. 8 decades later, in 2025, in the same region of Quebec, a heat wave unleashes horrendous swarms of horseflies, while humans fall prey to strange flights of rage and violence. Theodore is living a simple life, working double shifts at the factory and drinking to forget, when a horsefly bite stirs him from his apathy and he impulsively kidnaps from the nursing home his grandfather, Mirielle, whose dementia has him living in the past during the gross ill biological weapons experiments. The two men end up on the same remote island, digging into the past. The horsefly, meanwhile, knows a few secrets. It says, loosely based on historical fact, Horsefly is a terrifying tale about the ways in which we try to dominate nature and how nature will inevitably wreak retribution upon us. I'm scared. That's scary. I'm definitely afraid. Flesh by David Szalay. Again, pronunciation, not my strong suit. This is about 15-year-old István, who lives with his mother in a quiet apartment complex in Hungary. New to the town and shy, he is unfamiliar with the social rituals at school and soon becomes isolated with his neighbor, a married woman close to his mother's age, as his only companion. These encounters shift into a clandestine relationship that István can barely understand, and his life soon spirals out of control. As the years pass, he is carried gradually upwards on the current of the 21st century's tides of money and power, moving from the army to the company of London's super-rich, with his own competing impulses for love, intimacy, status, and wealth winning him unimaginable riches until they threaten to undo him completely. These all sound amazing. I hope you're taking notes. Okay, this sounds really intense. This one is called Born by Heather Birrell. This is about a high school English teacher named Elise who loves teaching Shakespeare. She's also very pregnant. The story has her trapped in her grade 12 classroom with her students during a lockdown. Anthony, a student who's the cause of the lockdown, is roaming the halls with a knife in search of some solace, consumed by thoughts of his best friend Samantha, who is in peril. Maria, the school's counselor, is second-guessing her decision to turn him in. As the lockdown drags on, Elise can no longer deny that she's going into labor, and she'll have to rely on the students to get her through. Cheyenne and Faduma end up acting as midwives, and the others do what they can. With infinite empathy for all involved, Born explores the myriad pitfalls and utopian possibilities of the school system, motherhood and caregiving, and the sometimes fraught, sometimes transcendent nature of the student-teacher relationship. That actually sounds fascinating. Next, we have a debut novel called Endling by Reva. So this follows in the absurdist tradition of Percival Everett. It has an endorsement by Miriam Taves. It's about a biologist battling to save the country's snail species from the brink of extinction. It's Ukraine 2022, and Reva is a loner and a maverick scientist who lives out of her mobile lab. She scours the country's forests and valleys, trying and failing to breed rare snails. While her relatives are urging her to give up, settle down, and finally start a family of her own. But they don't know Reva already dates plenty of men, not for love, but to fund her work. Oh, she sounds like a real badass, doesn't she? Entertaining Westerners who come to Ukraine on guided romance tours believing they'll find docile brides untainted by feminism and modernity. I want to read this right now. Nastya and her sister Solomia are also entangled in the booming marriage industry, posing as a hopeful bride and her translator while secretly searching for their missing mother, a flamboyant protester who vanished after years of fierce activism against the romance tours. And so begins the journey of a lifetime across hundreds of miles, 3 angry women, a truck full of kidnapped bachelors, and Lefty, a last-of-his-kind snail, with one final shot at perpetuating his species. Oh, that sounds so good! Endling sounds amazing. Adding it to my TBR right away. I think it comes out. When does it come out? I can tell you when it comes out. It doesn't come out till June 3rd, but when it comes out, I'm gonna be adding that one to my TBR. Okay, here we go. We're doing the rotation. Good thing my living room is tidy. The next book I want to tell you about is I Want to Die in My Boots by Natalie Appleton. This is a tribute to a daring female outlaw of Canada's Wild West who I had to look up, and even when I looked her up, I couldn't really find very much information about her. It's based on the untold story of a woman named Belle Jane, who was the woman who ran one of Canada's largest cattle thieving rings in the 1920s. She brilliantly broke every taboo, took the names of 5 different husbands, and nearly followed the tragic end of her great hero, the outlaw queen Belle Starr, who I was able to find more information on. This book is apparently meticulously researched and mostly true, so that makes it a very unconventional literary novel that gives voice to the unheard in a long forgotten world. After leaving Montana for a 3rd husband and the ranch she'd always wanted, Belle settles in Saskatchewan before spending her final years in Penticton, reading tarot cards for strangers. That sounds really good as well. Sounds fascinating. Okay, guys, I had to move because I was sitting in the sun and the light was getting to me. So just sitting in another chair in my living room, moving around, you know, trying to stay cool. We actually had a huge snowstorm yesterday, and you know, the weather's been very wintry, but I think my sweater is just a bit warm with the sun pouring in this apartment. I love it, but it's also, sometimes it can be too warm. On to the next book, A Mouthful of Salt by Reem Gaafar. So this book is actually the winner of the 2023 Island Prize. So the Island Prize is given out by the Commonwealth Foundation. The Island Prize welcomes unpublished writers from across Africa and the diaspora. So the description reads, when a little boy drowns in the treacherous currents of the Nile, the search for his body unearths further disaster for his northern Sudanese village, exposing secrets that had been buried for generations. 3 women try to make their way through a world that wants to keep them back, separated from each other by time, but bound together by the same river that weaves its way through their lives, giving little and taking much more. A Mouthful of Salt uncovers a country on the brink of seismic change, as its women decide for themselves which traditions are fit for purpose and which prophecies it's time to rewrite. Lake Burntshore by Aaron Kreuter, a funny and resonant coming-of-age novel about one summer of momentous social and political change at a Jewish sleepover camp. It's the summer of 2013, and 21-year-old Ruby, a counselor at Camp Burntshore, can't wait to supervise a rowdy cabin of 11-year-olds, smoke weed by the fire, and argue about which city makes the best bagels. Oh yes, oh yes. But when Brent, the camp's owner's son, hires Israeli soldiers to deal with a staffing shortfall, Ruby, a committed anti-Zionist, must decide if she's willing to jeopardize her place at Burntshore to fight Brent over the contentious issues of Jewish belonging and settler colonialism, even as she finds herself falling in love with one of the soldiers, the sweetly handsome Eddy. Oh, this sounds really good. How am I going to get a chance to read all of these books? I can't. There's too many good books. What am I going to do? We, the Kindling by Otoniya J. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly. By Otoniya J. Okot Bitek. As this spare and luminous novel begins, we meet Miriam, Helen, and Maggie, 3 friends who years ago when they were school children, survived capture by the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda. Now, as the women go about their lives in the city, shopping and caring for their children, planning and thinking about what the future might hold, we come to understand how deeply their past haunts their present. That sounds really good too. I'm going to be saying that after everyone. I want to read them all. This one's set in Montreal. It's called I Remember Lights by Ben Ladouceur. It's about a young queer man's story living in Montreal. In the summer of 1967, love is all you need, but some forms of love are criminal. As the spectacular Expo 67 celebrations take shape, a young man new to Montreal learns about gay life from cruising partners, one-night stands, live-in lovers, and friends. Once the expo begins, he finds romance with a charismatic visitor, but their time is limited. When the fireworks wither to smoke, so do their options. A decade later, during the notorious 1977 police raid on a gay bar called Trucks, he comes to understand even more about the bitter choice so often made by men like him between happiness and safety. To Place a Rabbit by Madhur Anand. This is a delightfully clever, artfully layered novel that begins with the author of a popular science book attending a literary festival. So a book about an author. And here she strikes up a friendship with another charismatic author. The novelist's recent book is an experiment, a novella that was written in English but published only in French translation, a language the novelist herself cannot read or understand. Interesting. Moreover, the novelist has lost her original manuscript of work. The scientist, who is fluent in French, impulsively offers to retranslate the novella back into English for the novelist. But as they embark on this task, she herself is haunted by memories, theories, and queries, especially about a long ago passionate affair with a French lover. These insert themselves into the translation process, troubling it, then fraying it, and finally pulling it apart at the seams. As the scientist desperately tries to complete her task before losing control of her well-organized life, both the novelist and the long ago French lover pop up in the present day. Of course they do, further complicating both life and art. Fantastic. A Daughter's Place by Martha Batiz. This is another historical novel. It's set in Madrid in 1599, and it's inspired by the real-life daughter of Miguel de Cervantes, celebrated author of Don Quixote. Following her mother's sudden death, the 15-year-old Isabel goes to live in the family home of her father, the poet and war hero Miguel de Cervantes, a man she has never met. Forced to pose as a maid to conceal her illegitimate status, Isabel must adapt to a new way of life with her jealous cousin and protective aunts, until she waits for her father to return from Seville. Meanwhile, in the nearby town of Esquivias, Miguel's pious and faithful wife Catalina similarly awaits his return, blissfully unaware of Isabel's existence. Capturing two tumultuous decades of Golden Age Spain in rich historical detail, Martha Batiz paints a compassionate portrait of a family on the precipice of great change and the fiercely independent woman at its center striving to make a life of her own. This one I've heard spoken about a few times because it's by the daughter of Miriam Taves, Georgia Taves. It's called Nobody Asked for This. It's described as a razor-sharp dramedy following a 20-something female comic as she navigates family grief, a dysfunctional friendship, and a date gone very wrong. Virginia is 23 and a stand-up comedian in between working the rounds of Toronto's small comedy club circuit and auditioning for paper towel commercials. She is tiptoeing around her depressed roommate and childhood friend Haley and having bi-weekly dinners with her bereaved stepdad, Dale, while trying to manage her own grief at the loss of her mother. She is also secretly working to get the green card that will be her ticket to LA. Well, maybe not anymore. And she hopes a glittering comedy career. At turns hilarious and heartbreaking, Nobody Asked for This reaches into the messy depths of love, friendship, grief, and trauma, and like all the best jokes, is utterly unpredictable. I mean, that write-up sounds great. that it would be great if it's good. I'm really gonna wait and see what other people have to say about that one before I pick it up. Another coming of age story, Small Ceremonies by Kyle Edwards. This is about two Indigenous boys that stand at the threshold of adulthood, navigating its challenges and possibilities. Tomahawk Shields and Clinton Whiteway are on the cusp of adulthood, imagining a future rife with possibility and greatness. The two friends play for their high school's poor-performing hockey team, the Tigers, who learn at the start of the new season that the league wants them out. Their annual goal is now more important than ever, to win their first game in years and break the curse. As we follow these two Indigenous boys over the course of a year, we are given a panoptic view of Tommy and Clinton's Winnipeg, where a university student with great ambitions chooses to bottle her anger when confronted with numerous micro and not so micro aggressions. An ex-convict must choose between protecting or exploiting his younger brother as he's dragged deeper into the city's criminal underbelly, and a lonely rink attendant who is haunted by the memory of a past lover and contemplates rekindling this old flame. So it sounds like it's a chorus of different voices to tell these boys' story, and it's a debut as well. So I'd be interested to read that. The Hype Beast by Adnan Khan. When a small-time crook finds himself in trouble, Hamid Shaikh is a small-town crook in the big city, hoping that one of his cons will lead to riches. Tax fraud, telemarketing tricks, government scams, whatever it takes. When he's not working the phones, hustling fake promises, he dreams of a move that will finally announce his arrival. When his girlfriend Natalie Mendoza vanishes, Hamid finds himself pulled into the orbit of former Guantanamo Bay detainee turned social media imam Abdul Mohammed. On the surface, Abdul's organization is virtuous. They are helping other detainees rehabilitate to life outside the prison. But as Hamid dives deeper into Abdul's nebulous and luxurious world, he finds a confusing mix of religious zeal and cynical self-advancement. With his connection to the Imam deepening, Hamid must decide how far into darkness he can go before losing sight of himself. Oh, that sounds so good too! Yeah! They all sound freaking amazing. They all sound so freaking good. Another debut, Julie Chan is Dead by Lian Zhang. This is a razor-sharp, diabolical debut thriller where a young woman steps into her deceased twin sister influencer's life only to discover dark secrets hidden behind her social media facade. Julia Chan has nothing. Her twin sister has everything, except a pulse. Dang, that sounds like a good, fun summer read. When is it coming out? It's coming out April 29th. So the last two books that I wanted to tell you about are two sets of short stories to round out my list of 25. The first is Skin by Catherine Bush. This is a set of stories that explore human intimacy and connection in a world shaped by ecological crisis and uncertainty. Ranging from the realistic to the speculative, Bush's stories tackle the condition of our restless, unruly world amidst the tumult of viruses, climate change, and ecological crisis. A man falls in love with the wind, a substitute teacher's behavior with a student brings unforeseen risks, a woman becomes fixated on offering foot washes to strangers. Bold, vital, and unmistakably of the moment, Skin gives a charged and animating voice to the question of how we face the world and how, in the process, we discover tenderness and allow ourselves to be transformed. Sounds good. Sounds like those stories are pretty relevant. And then the other set of short stories I wanted to talk about is Other Worlds by Andre Alexis. In this set of collected short stories, Andre Alexis draws connections between different worlds. The ones that we occupy, the ones we imagine, and the ones that preceded our own. He introduces us to characters during moments of profound puzzlement and confusion, and transports us from 19th century Trinidad and Tobago to small town Ontario, and then to Amherst, Massachusetts, and to contemporary Toronto. These captivating stories are described as revealing flashes of reckoning, defeat, despair, alienation, and understanding, all the while playfully using a multitude of literary genres, including Gothic horror, isekai? I don't even know what isekai is. I have to look that up. And referencing works from greats like Jane Austen, Jonathan Swift, Yasunari Kawabata, clearly that's what I need to look up, Witold Gombrowicz, and Tommaso Landolfi. I need to look some of those up because I've not even heard of those. Masterfully crafted, blending poignant philosophical inquiry and wry humor tinged with the absurd, here are worlds refracted and reflected back to us with pristine clarity. That sounds really good to me. And then finally, a novel that has been translated and is coming out in June, Amaruk the Wolf. It is one of the first full-length novels ever written in Inuktitut, which is the Inuit language that is spoken in Central and Eastern Canadian Arctic. It's been out of print for over 20 years, and it's been retranscribed, translated, and meticulously edited to produce a commercially available bilingual version for the first time. Written by the Inuit elder Uvanik Kamanik, this sweeping novel oscillates between time and place, alternating between a modern Arctic community where a teen lives with his family and navigates the challenges of family life to the world of Inuit stories woven by the teen's grandfather, who tells the boy of the epic coming-of-age journey of Amaruk, a young shaman. This book highlights the power of stories to teach and inform everyday experiences. That's it, everyone. That's a list of Canadian books coming out in the spring. It's very exciting. There's so many reading experiences to be excited about. There's so many books to look forward to, and I know it's always difficult to choose what to read, but I really hope that if you're watching this video that you add a Canadian book to your TBR sometime in the coming months. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in my next video. And yeah, say hi in the comments. Let me know you're watching. Bye for now. I need to look up isekai. Is that like a kind of a, it's got to be a kind of a story? Isekai is a Japanese genre of fiction. This is something new that I'm learning, where a character is transported to a different world. The term means different world or another world. Cool! Wow! Awesome. I have to come up with a different way of saying that sounds really good. That sounds fantastic. That sounds amazing. Incredible. Woo! They all sound fantastic, amazing, incredible. So it welcomes unpublished writers from across Africa. It welcomes submissions from unpublished writers. It welcomes submissions from I can't speak. Like, clearly I have a speaking problem. I'm too hot and can't speak. Thank you so much for watching this video.